Hello Miners, I'm doing something a little different today. I'm doing a quick little podcast video of my hopes and opinions when it comes to the upcoming BnR on December 16th. I'm going to lay out what I think should be banned, why it should be banned, and some cards I've heard floated around that some think should be banned, but I personally don't. So, just kind of a little video essay of sorts, laying out my logic going into Monday, my predictions, my hopes, and yeah, let's just hop right into it then. Okay, to start things off, let's start off with the non-controversial cards I feel should be banned that it seems like most of the rest of the community agrees on. I'm gonna start out with Psychic Frog. This card, as soon as it was spoiled, I said it was going to be busted. We have seen time and time again that 2 mana card advantage engines that fit into the blue tempo shells tend to break the format. We've seen this with Expressive Iteration, we've seen this with Dreadhorde Arcanist, we've seen this with Renin 6. These 2 mana card advantage engines are just too much for the format to be able to handle. They increase the consistency and lethality of these blue shell decks way too much. With Psychic Frog in particular, you get the card advantage whenever it hits a player or a planeswalker. You also get to see that it can grow itself, so you're discarding a card to grow it, and then you're getting that card back once it makes contact, so you're staying card neutral, and you can turn unnecessary cards into advantageous cards, like unneeded lands or unneeded cantrips that aren't going to work in the face of a Bowmaster or something. You can get rid of those to convert them into damage and then be able to also get a card back, so you're never actually going down cards. And the fact that these are +1/+1 counters means the extra power and toughness just sticks around. It might not be as big of a deal if this was a +1/+1 till end of turn sort of situation, so that this advantage just doesn't keep snowballing on itself. But even then, the fact that you're able to turn unwanted cards into damage and also into another card, that in and of itself is just too much for our format at this point. Add in the fact that this card also has built-in evasion that it's able to fuel on its own, makes this card just a fucking nightmare to deal with in combat. Not only can it outgrow anything that's blocking it, it can now also grow itself, exile a bunch of cards from the graveyard, and then just fly over whatever you were going to block with anyways. There's also some unique synergies specifically for these blue control and tempo shells of being able to exile cards from the graveyard, such as being able to exile additional instants and sorceries once you already have a Murktide region on the battlefield, and not only grow your frog and jump it, but you're also growing the Murktide region at the same time. Also, being an instant speed free discard outlet allows it to be able to slot into combo Reanimator shells, and it's what allows the Refrognator deck to be able to play a hardcore tempo game plan and just slot in a tiny Reanimator I win the game combo package on top of it that is able to protect with that crazy efficient, effective blue combo or blue tempo shell that it's already trying to play. This card is just egregious on basically every level, and it's a mistake we've seen Wizards do multiple times in the past and have to ban the card advantage engine that they printed because it's just too much for the format when it already slots into what is arguably one of the best shells that has ever been in this format and is continually at the top of the meta ever since the Miracles ban. Even when they ban it, they find something else to put in its place, or the shell itself is so strong that it can still survive without the card advantage engine. It's the card advantage engine that just puts it over the top and makes it so that it needs to be banned. So that's my first pick, is Frog needs to go. I've been saying that since it was spoiled. Hopefully Wizards does the right thing and finally knocks it out now. People were saying it should have been banned back when Grief was banned, and I 100% agree with that. But we'll see if Wizards will do the right thing this time around and get the Frog out of our format. Alright, next up on my list of cards that they need to ban out of this format is Vexing Bauble. I was kind of on the line about this card when it was spoiled. I was a little iffy on it, mostly due to the fact that I am a Black Saga Storm player in person, and this one card shuts off basically half of that deck. So personally, I was a little worried about it just from that standpoint, but I'm like, okay, let's see how this goes. We've played up against like Chalice on Zero before, and we've been able to navigate through that. Let's see if we can find a way to deal with the Vexing Bauble and see if it's really going to nuke my deck or not. That being said, I understand kind of the logic behind the design of this card. It's trying to shut down unfair things that you're casting for free. I believe part of the logic behind this was knowing that Modern Horizons 3 was going to be going on to Arena, was to be able to give the client something to be able to deal with the Evoke Elementals. And that being said, we see yet again a lock piece meant to stop unfair stuff from locking out the counters to the unfair stuff. So we've seen this a few times in the past. The most recent example that always comes to my mind personally is Force of Negation in Living Index. It's meant to be a defensive reactionary card that is being co-opted by the offensive combo decks to be able to protect their combo. And that's part of the reason why Violent Outburst got banned in Modern, was so that you couldn't use Force of Negation to protect your combo when you're going off in your opponent's turn. The Mystic Forge style decks and the Eldrazi decks running around right now are using a Vexing Bauble to be able to lock out your opponent's counter spells from being able to stop them from doing what they're trying to do. And the fact that it comes down on turn one, you already know, worst case scenario, it's probably going to get a counter out of your opponent's hand because they just have to counter it. Otherwise, those counters are now going to be completely shut off anyways. So it's kind of the whole Veil of Summer Thoughtseize situation where if you Thoughtseize someone and you see a Veil of Summer in their hand, you just have to take the Veil of Summer. Otherwise, you know it's going to protect them later on down the line. And in essence, it kind of did what it was supposed to do anyways and remove the spell that your opponent was trying to use to push their stuff through anyways. So being able to see it in that kind of role, it's not sticking with its, I assume, intended purpose of being able to stop the busted stuff. It's forcing the busted stuff through. The other thing about this card that honestly sets it over the edge is a lot of kind of lock pieces tend to be bad as the game goes on and your opponent has been able to establish themselves under it and before it happens. With Vexing Bauble, because of the fact that it cantrips, even if you draw it late and it's too late to use the lockout side of it, it still just replaces itself. So it's never a bad draw in the late game. It's basically just a mana inefficient cantrip. So you're never even like super mad to see this later on down the line, even after your opponent's been able to kind of establish themselves on the board already, because it's just going to get you another card deeper to hopefully find an answer to stop your opponent anyways. So Bauble does need to go. I wanted to give it the benefit of the doubt and see how the format adapted to it, but because of the fact that it is preventing the normal checks and balances of the format from keeping busted shit in line, it needs to go. It's doing too much to enable the busted shit now at too low of a cost. Alright, last card on the relatively uniformly wanted bans here that I'm going to talk about is Nadu Winged Wisdom. This one I have a little bit of a different take on than the other two cards that everyone kind of agrees need to be banned. I don't think this is a power level ban the way that the other two are. I think this is an obnoxious play pattern ban, and I've honestly been kind of a vocal opponent to play style and unfun card bans in the past. But because of the fact that this is a pseudo non-deterministic infinite combo, so to speak, it just leads to some really, really bad gameplay and game patterns and taking matches way too long. Some of these decks that are running it are just slotting it into Breakfast as a value engine, which I feel like that in and of itself isn't terrible, because even if you go through the combo and empty your library with Nadu, there is an I win button on that turn to be able to do it if you can get the chain going. So it is a one-turn win, and it is deterministic in that sense. It's more of these value-y, like Nadu Elves decks that don't have the combo finish to them and are using this purely as just a crazy value card draw engine that I think are the problem, because realistically, when Nadu hits the battlefield and they have a Nomads or a Shuko and start doing their thing, your opponent's pretty much 99% to win, but because it's non-deterministic and it causes the game to drag on, you're kind of just sitting there. You don't have to scoop. You really shouldn't, because there's always a possibility that they don't draw what they need to, and they're not presenting a lethal board, and they're not presenting a combo finish. They're just amassing card draw and value out of it. And there's always ways to kind of wiggle your way out of that, even if it's a like sub 1% chance. But most of the time, it's just you're sitting there while your opponent kind of just plays solitaire with themselves with no actual end in sight. And I know that sounds a little hypocritical coming from a combo player who does play a lot of infinite combo style decks that do require a lot of clicking. But I feel the difference is when there is a deterministic end to the game as a result of all of this. In paper, you can demonstrate the infinite loop, and it's just done. You're like, hey, this is how it's going to end. I'm going to win the game. Even in paper, with this particular deck, there's no deterministic win. It's just a value engine that you're basically amassing resources to stop the opponent from doing whatever they want to do, and you win slowly over the course of a number of turns by beating down with these small creatures and Nadu. And it just drags the game on longer than it needs to, especially in a high stakes event. You're not going to scoop, and it's just going to make the games last so long and just run into potential logistical issues later on down the line as these matches go to time, go into extra turns, all that kind of stuff. And even in extra turns, if it's a non-deterministic version of Nadu, those turns can take forever because your opponent can draw 10, 15 cards depending on how much stuff is on the battlefield. At that point, your opponent is honestly more at risk of decking themselves than of actually killing you. So this is one where I think, honestly, power level wise, it's not really a problem. It's the logistics and the gameplay that comes from Nadu that it shouldn't be in the format, and it really should go along with the other cards. Alright, now on to some of my more kind of controversial opinions as far as cards I think should leave the format. The first one I'm going to start off with is Troll of Khazad-dûm. Normally, I would look at this card and I wouldn't think it's worthy of a ban, and in all honesty, if it wasn't for the shell that has adapted it, I don't think it necessarily would need one, but because of how it's being used in Refroginator decks, it really just increases the consistency of the deck and allows it to function way more consistently than it should off of the extremely thin land count the deck already runs, and the fact that this low land count tempo deck is playing a full play set of Wastelands, and Troll allows you to be able to Wasteland on turn 1, guarantee another land off of that Wasteland to fix your mana, and makes what should be normally unkeepable hands keepable. It also allows you to be able to like turn 1 Wasteland, see what your opponent does, cycle the Troll, get it into the graveyard, Wasteland your opponent's turn 1 land, and then theoretically reanimate the Troll off of the land you got from the Troll. It just adds way too much consistency to the Refroginator and Dimir tempo style shells. The fact that it also has like super menace, so to speak, gives it more evasion than it realistically should for its cost, and it in and of itself is a good backup beatdown plan if they aren't going to try to reanimate one of their big fatties. The counterpoint I've heard to some of this is just either ban Reanimate or ban Entomb, and I really don't personally want to see either of those cards go. They enable some really fun true combo Reanimator style strategies, some really cool like Echo of Aeon's wheel style decks, and they've existed in the format way longer than Troll or any of these other cards have, and have been able to be healthy in the format. So I really do think that it's just the consistency and the evasion of Troll that kind of push these other cards people are talking about over the edge. And that's why Troll should probably go along with some of the other cards come Monday. Alright, now the last card that I think I would like to see go on Monday is Sowing Mycospawn. This one I'm honestly the most kind of on the edge about. On its face, it doesn't seem like it is too egregious of a card. It's the kicker part of it, I think, that is just too much. The ability to kick it, and especially as quickly as you can kick it in these Eldrazi and Mystic Forge style shells, being able to do it as early as like turn 2 to effectively just wipe out all of your opponent's lands, is really what puts this card a bit over the edge and on my radar for needing to be out of the format. Um, the body itself is whatever. 3/3, I mean, it's a respectable body, but it's really those abilities on cast with the kicker exile and the land tutor that are problematic. A lot of times, what you're seeing is when it's kicked, you're exiling an opponent's basic and grabbing a wasteland to take out their non basic. So it's basically a 6 mana double wasteland or double sinkhole. But in the shells that are playing it, they're casting this way, way sooner because you've got all the soul lands, you've got Lotus Petals. There's also Glaring Fleshraker to be able to power out spawns to help kick this as well. It's just happening too consistently and too early to really be healthy for the format, in my opinion. Also, if you don't need the Wasteland, it being able to tutor out any other land that's just going to accelerate the rest of your deck further, whether it's a Yavimaya to get green mana to keep doing this with redundant Myco spawns, or it's tutoring out a Eye of Ugin to be able to tutor out a big fatty or something. It's just, again, another case of way too much on a card for way too low of a cost. And add on the fact that the really problematic parts of this card are also cast triggers. So it's basically consign to memory, stifle, or bust. You're not countering the parts of the card that really matter. Yeah, you can stop the body, but it's just a 3/3. It's kind of whatever. It's like a non-evasive Delver. It's really those cast triggers that are the problem with this card, and it's really forcing the format into a world where if you can play Consign to Memory, you play as many of them as you possibly can, and it's kind of stifling deck building, especially sideboard slots to a certain extent. And any other deck that can't play that, you're just kind of shit out of luck. You're like, okay, well, I guess my lands are gone. Bye. So I do think this one is on the verge of needing to be banned. I wouldn't be sad to see it go. I'd actually probably be happy to see it go, but I'm willing to be wrong on this one, and that maybe there's something else in the deck that's more problematic than this. But I do feel this card is just too much for too little, and I do think it should at the very least be on a watch list, if not gone on Monday. Alright, and then just to kind of finish this video up too, I just kind of want to lay out my logic for why there are certain cards I'm seeing suggested running around to be banned that I honestly don't think need to be or should be banned. Specifically, I'm talking Entomb and Reanimate. I'm seeing some people saying that those are the cards that need to go to truly knock Refroginator off of the top of the meta. While those are what enable its crazy starts and some super fast free wins, I don't feel like those are the problem of that deck specifically. It is the shell and all of the other things that are enabling and protecting that are the problem. Entomb and Reanimate have been around the format for a very long time. Yes, Entomb was banned at one point, but was unbanned, and it has not been a problem until recently. It enables a bunch of really cool true Reanimator style decks, whether it's the old school like Rakdos Reanimator or the World Gorger combo style decks and stuff like that. It also enables some cool artifact style storm decks to be able to entomb a Echo of Eons to be able to wheel, or some other kind of crazy fringe graveyard strategies as well. I would really hate to see that leave the format and just completely nuke those archetypes out of the format entirely. Reanimate's along the same lines. Yes, it is a cheap reanimation spell, but it comes at a cost. You do lose a lot of life to reanimate something big. Yes, it is fast, but again, the Entomb Reanimate package has existed in the format for a long time and honestly not been problematic until recent printings. So that shows to me that the problem isn't the Entomb Reanimate package. It is everything that has been printed since that is going into these shells to protect that combo or enable it or give those strategies a hard to deal with backup plan in the case of Refroginator. So I truly feel those two cards, Entomb and Reanimate, they are fine in the format. It's everything else in those shells that is the problem. It's Frog, it's Vexing Bauble, it's stuff like that that is making it so that you can't interact with that combo that are the problem and not actually the combo itself. So I do not feel either of those cards should be banned from the format. I would really hate to see them banned because I really do enjoy playing some of those graveyard style strategies that rely on those cards. So hopefully Wizards will not ban those cards from the format on Monday. So that kind of just lays out my thoughts as far as what I would like to see and my logic going into the BnR on Monday, December 16th. Let me know in the comments what you all think, if you agree, if you disagree, what your logic is, what you're hoping to see, if I left out any cards that you would like to see banned. And hopefully Wizards does the right thing and doesn't let Legacy languish like it did before. It took way too long to ban Grief. We did see that the Legacy expert on their staff was advocating for a Grief ban and they just ignored them. So hopefully they will not do that again. I really hope WotC learned their lesson of not ignoring the community and not ignoring the Legacy expert and doing what is best for the format. Eternal Weekend, both North America and Europe, were huge events. It is clear our format has a community. We are thriving. We are large. We are playing. This is not a dead format. It is not a format that WotC should just ignore, sweep under the rug, and be like, oh, no one plays this. Who cares what kind of state it's in? This format is alive and well despite all of the hurdles that are thrown at us from WotC in terms of the reserve list and event planning. Legacy is not dead. It deserves the attention every other format gets. We have a dedicated and passionate player base. We are trying to grow it. We are always growing. I've talked to countless people who want to play this format. It deserves the attention all of the other formats get. So please, WotC, do the right thing. Curate this format so that it is healthy, so that it is enjoyable, and do not let this languish like you did, waiting way too long for that Grief ban. Thank you everybody for watching. I hope you all enjoyed this. As I said, let me know your opinions down in the comments. I will catch you all next time, and as always, stay salty. Thank you for watching the video. I hope you like what you saw. If you did, do me a favor, hit that like and sub button below. They are free ways to support the channel. And drop a comment, let me know what you like. Any kind of feedback you got, your opinions on my gameplay, the decks that I play, any of that kind of stuff. If you really like what you see, go ahead and drop by the Patreon. Become a patron, get to read some of my tournament reports and some stuff going on outside of just Magic in my life that I'm going to start putting over there as kind of my own personal blog. Also, you can do donation deck lists over there, just the price of a league if you have a specific deck you want to see, or you have an idea you want me to brew around, something like that, go ahead and do that. Nothing is required. It's always appreciated, though. Any donations go directly back into the channel, covering stuff such as leagues for donation decks or the rental program that I'm a part of. I am a small-time YouTuber. I'm doing this for fun. I really hope you all like what you saw. I truly appreciate you all stopping by. I will catch you all in the next video, and as always, stay salty.